introduce Sami for those of you who don't know him. I'll give you a little bit of background. My name is Sophia Witt. I'm the Director of Outreach and Development for Students Supporting Israel. For those of you who don't know, Students Supporting Israel is a grassroots student-led campus movement. Our mission is to be a clear and confident pro-Israel voice on college campuses and to support students in grassroots pro-Israel advocacy. That being said, today is Yom HaShoah, or Holocaust Remembrance Day, and SSI finds it necessary to recognize those who are unable to see the state of Israel today because they were murdered for the sole fact that they were Jewish. We know that there are...
Sophia speaking.
Say again?
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to mute everybody.
I was talking to my mom. Sorry, Sophia.
Don't worry, don't worry.
Myself.
All right. That being said, because today is Yom HaShoah, we know that there are 189,500 Holocaust survivors currently living in Israel, and there are others around the world with the average age of 84. And as they grow older, it becomes more and more vital that we hear their stories today, and especially today being Yom HaShoah. So as SSI has programs for Holocaust education, like our Undenied program, we're honored to have a speaker like Sami to speak to us today on Yom HaShoah. And I'm not going to take up all of the time because this isn't about me, this is about Sami, and we are here to hear him speak. So Sami, without further ado, please take it away.
Well, first of all, I'm very honored to be here. From my perspective, because I've been in many campuses, I think the most effective organization fighting for Israel is SSI. So obviously, I want to honor also Ilan, okay, for starting this grassroots movement. I've been invited to Columbia University, and I don't know how many of you know Rudy. He was the first president, Dalia, right now Fia. So I'm extremely happy being part of the SSI. And I'm very proud of what you are doing. I don't know if they are doing it in every campus, but when you have the Liberation Day, okay, whenever I can, I'm always there. That's wonderful. If somebody does not know what Liberation Day is, ask Dalia's, okay? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about myself. I belong to two generations. I'm a Holocaust survivor because I was in a labor camp with my parents in an area called Transnistria. The name of the camp was Mogil Podolsk. I'm also a child of Holocaust survivors because all three of us survived. For 63 years, I felt I don't belong to either generation. I felt I don't belong to the Holocaust survivors because I have no memory of that period of time. For me, it is a blessing in disguise. I don't have to relive those horrors every single day like the other survivors. I also felt I don't belong to the second generation because most of them were born after the war, during, okay, in the DP camps. Not that life was easy in the DP camps, but the problem was there was no threat of being killed. Last December, on December 21st, I reached a milestone. I am 80 years old, and I'm probably the youngest war survivor that you will ever meet. I met a couple of other ones, but they were born, like I said before, during the war in the camps. What happened, since I did not speak about it, I don't have any memories. My parents did not talk about it. So for 63 years, I felt I don't belong to either generation. And in November 1st and November 2nd of 2003, something happened that changed my life. The Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. closed its doors to the general public for 2 days. And they had it every single year, but for some reason, in 2003, I decided to go to D.C. Bashir, meant to be, I have no idea why. And imagine yourself that it was closed for 2 days to the general public. Opened it up only to the Holocaust survivors, their children, and their liberators. There were over 8,000 people from all over the world. And at the table where I was sitting, I met the man born in the same city, been in the same camp, the same years, 1941, 1944. He was taken when he was 8 months old. I was taken when I was a year and a half. So this is the difference between history and living history. You are the last generation that will meet a Holocaust survivor. By meeting him, that prompted me to stop ignoring being a Holocaust survivor and doing something about it. In 2007, I joined the third largest museum, Holocaust museum in the world, Israel, DC, New York. And in 2008, I was given an assignment to speak to 6th graders. Now, a lot of you have spoken publicly, but if you remember your first presentation, it's not the best, it's not the most complete. I did not have a story. I did not know that I can tell a story. I had no idea what impact I would have on such young people. Again, Bashert meant to be, they sent me thank you letters, each one better than the other. But one 6th grader changed my life forever. She wrote, P.S., your story was overwhelming, and I promise I'll pass your story to my children. When I saw that impact that I have in such young people, I decided to dedicate the rest of my life to reach as many young people as I can, nationally and internationally. I am also, in addition, and I will tell you more about it, how I survived. But in addition to that, I'm also a motivational speaker. And I will tell you more about it later, but right now I'll just give you 2 major challenges, and I will also tell you how I overcame them. I do not want you to feel sorry for me, but I want you to understand, under any circumstance, never to give up, never to lose hope. And number one, at age 56, I became homeless. I live today in the most expensive city in the country, and I still smile, on a monthly income of $1,299. Okay, I am one third of Holocaust survivors in the United States that live under the poverty line. The other challenge that I had to overcome is I have 2 grandchildren, and I'm not allowed to be with them. And later on, you can ask me the questions, and I will go into more details. So what happened is, as a motivational speaker, what I want to do is, I have about 6 months ago, I've been in many, many campuses and schools, and I realized that a lot of the students, especially Jewish students, are to some extent clueless about the Holocaust itself. And I started about 6 months ago, I started to give the background, what happened. Whether you know it or not, the Germans did not want to kill the Jews when they came to power. What they wanted to do is they wanted to have a Germany free of Jewish people. And therefore, in 1935, they came out with very draconic laws, the Nuremberg laws, and between 600 and 800,000 Jews that lived in Germany because of the Nuremberg laws, a lot of them left. And by the time of the war, the beginning of the war, only 200,000 remained, and a lot of them remained because of the Jewish leader told them this is the most enlightened country in the world and it cannot get any worse. But the other thing that is also very important, when the war started, Europe was occupied. Poland was never occupied. Poland was annexed. And we have to know the difference between occupation and annexation. So now Poland became part of the greater Germany. So in Germany proper, they did not want the Jews. What do you do with the people in Poland? They found 3.3 million Jews. And that came the idea, and the whole Holocaust idea was evolved. And what happened is the Holocaust did not start like a lot of people think when the Nazis came to power or when the war started. It started in June 22nd, 1941, when the Wehrmacht attacked former Soviet Union. Behind the German troops were special groups called Einsatzgruppen, and their job was to murder the subhumans. Russians were considered subhumans, and the Jews. They murdered by bullets 1.5 million people. However, okay, that was unofficial. Okay. Officially, it started on January 20, 1942. 15 high-ranking Nazi criminals got together in a city which today is part of Berlin, Wannsee, and they decided, okay, the final solution to the Jewish question. Among them was one person. He was not one of the policy makers. He was one that implemented it. And I use him as an example of the efficiency of the Germans and their collaborators to murder so many people in such a short time. His name is, if you don't know it, Adolf Eichmann. Adolf Eichmann, towards the end of the war in 1944, okay, in 2 months, deported 437,000 Hungarian Jews to their deaths. What happened is there were 2 trials. There was the Nuremberg trial, but it was not about the Holocaust. It was to bring the criminals to justice. But the Eichmann trial, which happened in 1961, that is the one that empowered the Holocaust survivors for the first time not to feel guilty, not to feel ashamed, and not to feel like victims. And they started to speak. The Eichmann trial was shown all over the world for 3 months, okay, every single day for 3 hours. And it so happened that at that time I was in Israel. The biggest problem that the Holocaust survivors had is how come a Jewish lawyer was part of the defense, okay, for Adolf Eichmann. But they wanted to make sure that nobody would be able, okay, to say anything that it was done, okay, according to the book. Now, talking about myself, so I wanted to talk about it, but let me tell you about me when I was in the camp. Since I was in a labor camp, obviously I could not work. I was too young, 1.5 years. So my life was spared because I was subjected to medical experiments. I still feel them today. Today, it's not as, the intensity is not as strong as it used to be, but at one time, okay, it was absolutely excruciating. And I suffer from head, neck, shoulder, and back problems. Especially, I'm talking about the back problems, there are no tests to prove it. So for about 45 years, even the doctors did not believe me when I told them I had back problem, because they used to ask me to do certain things. And I knew how it would affect me, but they couldn't see it on my face. So imagine yourself, you go to a doctor, you tell them you're in pain, excruciating pain, and they don't believe you. Because, okay, I'm coming from a generation that was very stoic. So what I want to stress is I am not against, okay, medical experiments, because they do it today to save lives. What I'm against is the way it was used during those days, without the people's consent. Okay, it was done without telling them the consequences of those experiments, and most importantly, in ways that you would not treat an animal. What happened is after they finished with the medical experiments, a lot of people died through attrition, disease, starvation. In camp stations, I was dying of starvation. Not far away from the camp, there was a farm owned by the Germans. And the woman brought food to the guards and the SS, so obviously she had access. And one day she saw me dying of starvation, and she decided to give me milk. People like her are called the righteous among the nations. I do not know her name, and I'm not able, or was not able, to honor her. However, 6 years ago, when I was in Israel and I gave testimony at Yad Vashem, I went to see the God honoring the righteous among the nations. And I saw a marker honoring the unknown righteous among the nations. So indirectly, she is honored. Okay. What happened is that when the war ended, we were liberated by the Red Army. And for 2 years, my parents, including me, wandered somewhere in the former Soviet Union. But since we were deported by the Romanians, not by the Germans, in 1946, they allowed a small group of Jews to repatriate. So my father, at that time, was an anti-communist. At one time, he was a communist, but he became an anti-communist, and he decided to choose the lesser of the two evils and decided to return back to Romania. For whatever reason, he settled in Transylvania. I've always been a Zionist all my life. And for me to be a Zionist, for me, it means the right of Jewish people to have their own country, and at the same time, okay, to determine our own future. In 1949, my father applied to go to Israel, but we got the visa only in 1961. When I came to Israel in 1961, I decided to volunteer, and I was part of the Israeli Air Force. And because of my age, I was close to 22, all the other soldiers used to call me Saba. Now, you are old enough, so let me tell you the story how I became a Zionist, besides the fact that I grew up in a Zionist family. In 1947, a small group of people came to our small town on their way to Palestine. We used to call them, you probably heard the word Chalutzi, pioneers. And one of them came to me, and I was about 6.5 years old, and he came to me and says, "Do you want to go to Palestine?" I said, "No." "Are you a Zionist?" "No." I said, "I'm going to circumcise you." You see, a little fear, okay? I decided to go to Israel to become a Zionist. And a little fear does not hurt. So, from Israel, when I finished my military career, 62, 65, in 1968, I came to the United States. I settled in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I met my ex, had my son, okay, got divorced, and went back to Israel. Has any one of you heard of something called Jewish mother? Oh, you did. So what happened is, like, when I came back to Israel in 1983, I kissed the ground. And for 2 years, I was extremely happy. But my mother, very sensitive woman, although uneducated, she noticed that I'm more American than Israeli. Okay, and while I was here in the States, I denied my Americanization. And she said, "If you ever want to go back, you have my blessing." I said, "Mother, don't joke, because one day I'll come to you and I'll say I'm leaving today." And she said, "Fine." In 1988, that's exactly what I did. And I came. And one of the reasons was that I wanted to meet my uncle, the only one from 42 people from my father's side that survived, and he lived in Santa Barbara. And the reason that I settled in Milwaukee is because I had a second cousin, very wealthy one, and he promised my father that he will take care of me. Promises made, not kept. So anyway, I had to struggle. I did not want to go back to Israel feeling like a failure. And 5 years later, when I decided, you know, enough is enough, now I can go back, I met my ex and I stayed for another 10 years. There is a lot more that I can tell you, okay? I will tell you more if you ask me, if you want to know how I overcame the challenges in my life. But one thing that is very important for, two things that are very important for me to tell you. The Holocaust did not happen suddenly. It evolved. And it all starts with words. And we as Jewish people, and I'm not going to use names because I don't go into politics, but even Jewish people do not use the proper words in the proper context. And I'll give you two examples that has to do with the United States and has to do with Israel. There are people in the United States that say the Holocaust is happening in the world, and that is your job to stand up and to say that is a lie. There is no Holocaust happening in the world. Genocide, yes. Genocide is made of two words, geno, which means group, side, murder. It's the murder of a group. But the Holocaust is the annihilation of a group. There is no ethnic group today slated to be completely annihilated from the face of the earth, like the Jews were. The other thing is, people say that there are concentration camps. And you have to stand up and say, that is a lie. You want to compare it? Compare it to the DP camps. There is no threat of being killed. But I use the word concentration camp, but in a different context. I don't know if you heard of the Uyghur people. The Uyghur people are Muslims, and their language is very close to the Turkish one. During World War II, when the Russian Jews did not want to be deported to Siberia or face other dire consequences, they went to the south, areas like Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan lived the Uyghur people, and they received the Jews with open arms. However, okay, I was asked to speak on their behalf in front of the UN building here in New York and at the National Rally in Washington, D.C. And to be honest with you, I had no idea who they were. So I had to do some research. And I found out that 15 million people, Uyghur, live in China. And about 2 years ago, they started being deported. It's different with the aliens that are coming to the States. They were deported. They are tortured. They are forced to give up their heritage. They are forced to give up their traditions and to accept, okay, the Chinese culture. The families here in the United States and all over the world do not know the fate of the people that have been deported, are afraid to talk to the families because if they will talk, they may be deported. So in this particular context, in the proper context, I use the word concentration camp. Okay, talking about, I'm an Israeli, so let's talk about Israel. In Israel, okay, one of the things is that, like for instance, Greeks, they're coming from Greece. Jews are coming from Judea. Okay, do not use a false narrative. Do not use the word West Bank. We as Jews have to use Judea and Samaria. If you use the word Judea and Samaria, there is no such thing as occupation. You cannot occupy your own land. Okay, so basically the other thing what I'm saying is, which is very important for all of us, especially as Jews, young people, to educate others, we have to stop using the word West Bank. That is perpetuating a false narrative. Now, people say there is an occupation. Like I said before, you cannot occupy your own land. But if you use the word occupation, which a lot of Jewish leaders use, basically what happens is that is confrontational. A better word to use is disputed territories. And by using disputed territories, that can lead to a dialogue. And before I'll let you ask me questions, okay, on any subject you want, okay, I want to tell you the meaning for me what a dialogue is. All of you have probably heard of UC Berkeley. In UC Berkeley, I found out that there was a Lebanese Christian student who had very strong negative feelings against Israel. And I was wondering if he would be willing to talk to me. To my surprise, he was. When I asked him, why do you feel so strongly, okay, against the state of Israel? I made sure that even facially, I did not give him the opportunity to misinterpret that I'm confrontational. The way you treat somebody, that's the way they treat you. He gave me the same courtesy. And 45 minutes later, we shook hands. And I said, you're taking two things, okay, and you're putting them together. If you're against the Israeli government's policy, you have my blessing. Even the Jews do it. But the state of Israel has done nothing to you. Can you separate the two issues? And he said, yes. And that's what I'm talking about, having a dialogue. Listen very carefully what the other person says. Do not confront them. Give him your, okay, opinion, whatever it is, but in a non-confrontational way, and we can achieve a lot more than being confrontational. So I'm going to open it up to questions. Any questions on any subject, okay, personal, non-personal. I don't represent anybody, so don't feel uncomfortable. And the more difficult questions you will ask, the better I will feel, because I don't have the answers to everything. And sometimes, like I told you with the good people, I'd have to do my own research to find out new things. Go ahead.
So I have a question. So my grandfather, he worked for Kupat Cholim in Israel in the 1950s. He's a doctor. So, but he was writing. He was telling me about how I forget which prime minister it was saying that the Holocaust survivors in Israel are very strong-minded and very and they they're very strong and they don't need any support for mental health care and this kind of thing, and it's something that you don't really need to worry about. But then there was a research study that showed that there was the suicide rates among Holocaust survivors in Israel was like way higher than any other demographic. And also just to show another thing that you mentioned, that there's a lot of Holocaust survivors that are below the poverty line living even in the US. So what do you think, why is there not a better network of support for Holocaust survivors throughout the world, and how can that be something that's changed?
So let me, first of all, let me respond to your background. A lot of the people in those days, unlike today, going to a psychiatrist, admitting that you have a mental issue, okay, that was shameful. Today, people are not ashamed of almost anything. In those particular days, okay, shame was a very big tool against somebody. So even my mother, who was depressed, she did not want to admit it. But finally, something happened and she went to a psychiatrist. And I don't know what the psychiatrist said. And all of a sudden, she started crying. And my father stopped her and said, stop crying. People in those days, okay, did not know about psychiatry and were ashamed, okay, to admit it. So that is one of the things, okay? That's why a lot of the people did not seek for help. And a lot of things in those days, in the early days after the Holocaust, people did not understand what the traumatic damage that it did to the people. But on the other hand, you have to understand something else. To survive the difficulties in the camps, they had to be very strong. They had to believe in something, okay? And they also had to be very strong-willed. And that helped a lot of the survivors. Why is it today that the Holocaust survivors like myself who live under the poverty line in the United States, there is no reason for it. Why it's happening that a lot of the agencies are spending a lot of money on staff. They're spending a lot of money on promoting what they do. And they give you something, but it's not in a sustained basis. So if they give to somebody, let's assume for medication, if they give something $200 or to buy something once in a blue moon, that is not going to improve somebody's life. So there is no agency that provides certain things for the Holocaust survivors, not in Israel, not here in the United States. I belong to several organizations. Did they help me financially? Yes, because like I told you, I live under the poverty line. So self-help financed purchasing a sofa bed for me. But that's a one time, okay? So it's not something that sustains me. I still have to live, okay, with $1,299. Thankfully, I don't know how many of you know Hebrew. Sameach b'chalki, I'm happy with my lot. So I don't need a lot more and everything else. But a lot of people are very needy. And it's unfortunate that, they're not providing more. To give an example, Conference Claim received money from Germany with coronavirus, okay, for the Holocaust survivors. I did not receive anything. Okay, so the money is spent for emergency. They define what emergency is. I have no idea. I don't need the money. I don't want the money. But that's not the point. I am not needy. A lot of them are needy. And we used to play soccer. The school did not have enough soccer balls for all the kids. So we used to make soccer balls from rags. My uncle, who lived in Santa Barbara, sent us a package. And in the package was a real soccer ball and a simple item made with the most popular kid in the school. Okay, we did not have in the house, we did not have a sink. We had to walk long distances to the well. Can you imagine how many times we had to go to pick up 2 pails and bring water so 4 people can take a bath? We did not have a toilet. There were only outhouses. So people do not understand what hunger is. Okay, people do not understand the conditions that people lived after the war. But the Holocaust survivors were and are very resilient. And the ones that believed in a higher power, believed in God, okay, a lot of them survived. People that had no faith whatsoever, a lot of them committed suicide. So faith played a big role. In my particular case, I grew up the Orthodox way. I am not practicing it today. I practiced it when my son was in my life. However, that was a personal decision. It was not based on the fact that the Holocaust did not play a role in my decision not to practice it. Yes. Another question.
I have a question. I saw on the news in Israel the other day that now a lot of kids of Holocaust survivors or grandkids are getting the same tattoo on their arm that their grandpa or grandma had in the Holocaust, as sort of like remembering them and also for other people to see that the Holocaust did in fact happen. I was wondering what your thoughts are on now other people getting the tattoos to remember the Holocaust.
Okay. Well, there are several things that I want to explain. There are several things that cannot be eradicated. Number one, bullying, hatred, ideology, anti-Semitism. Guns will not destroy it. It can be done only through education. And that is your job to do it. But you cannot change anybody. You can change somebody's perspective. I want you to keep that in mind. They have to make the change. But you have to educate yourself, to be educated, to be able to educate somebody else. So even if somebody in your family did not lose anybody in the Holocaust, I still ask all of you to do what I am doing. And at some point in your life, to start to go to schools, campuses, and talk about it. Take anybody's story, a Holocaust survivor, anybody's story. Learn it and personalize it, what it means to you to tell the story. Because the problems we are having right now in the world, half of the world population does not know that the Holocaust happened. 1/3 believe that it's a myth, it's exaggerated. And young people, and I'm talking even in campuses, trust me, I've been doing it for 12 years. I'm the new kid on the block, but I've been doing it for 12 years. Young people are totally clueless. I was surprised, I was shocked, and that's why I'm starting to give the background of the Holocaust. People don't know the difference between occupation and annexation. Okay? There's so many misconceptions about Israel, so many misconceptions about things. And you have to really educate yourself, and this story must be told forever. And it will be your job to do it. And if you don't have a personal story, learn somebody's story and personalize it and do it. But I'll tell you something, if this is your generation, if you're not going to do it, if your kids are not going to do it, okay, people will forget about it. It will be just a footnote in the history. And it should never be, because unless you have the knowledge, you cannot prevent it. And take a look at what's happening today in the world. Thank you, Imbal. Very good question. Yes.
Sami, we have a question on our Instagram. It says, how do you respond to people who equate IDF soldiers to Nazis?
Very good question. Any comparison to the past is totally inappropriate. Times were different. Regimes were different. Attitudes were different. There is no comparison. They did not have the social media that we have today. I'm alone. If I would not have the social media available, okay, right now I'm sleeping a lot and I'm playing stupid, mindless computer games to pass my time because I'm alone. Some people have yards, they can go out. Some people have stay with their families. I've been cooped up for a month. I would go crazy. Can you imagine yourself being for 2 months without any possibility to be connected to another human being? You'll go crazy. People do not understand social media, what it has done for us. But social media is a tool, okay, for good, but it's also a tool to promote hatred. So it's very important to be connected, and it's your world. I fought my wars, now it's yours. Yes. I don't know if I answered the question. Was that the question?
The question was, how would you respond to somebody who said the IDF are like Nazis? I
would stand up and say, there's no comparison. They are not Nazis. They are not killing. They're not murdering anybody. They are not coming to somebody with a mother that has with a baby, and they did not want to waste the bullets. So with one bullet, they kill both of them. Okay? The Israelis are not taking somebody's baby, okay, from a mother's arms, okay? Go to a building, 4 floors, open the window, and drop the baby. Just for fun. Okay, and after that, coming from the most enlightened country in the world, being highly intelligent, okay, they would have a very good, nice dinner with a glass of wine, and they would listen to Beethoven. Are the Israelis doing that? Okay, talking about this particular one, answering that particular question, I don't go into politics, but I have to stress one thing, which is important. People are talking about having one or two countries. And unfortunately, I personally, and you don't have to agree with me, but I'm saying until we have a partner for peace, we cannot have two countries. Okay, Hamas is not a partner of peace. PLO is not. And they don't even recognize the right of Israel to exist. So if you don't recognize the right of the Jews to live in their own country, how do you want to make peace with them? That's my personal opinion. But I'll give you another example. I was on the March of the Living with students from the Bay Area. That was I believe, 2 or 3 years ago. I'm starting to forget about the years. And everybody happy, you know, they've been in Israel, we love Israel, and blah, 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 blah. And I was at their international convention. And guess who were 2 of the people that participated in the March of the Living, which table they were met in? J Street. The problem is that we do not teach the young people when they're very young. I go to school starting with 4th graders. They're not too young to learn the history. And if we don't teach them, history will repeat itself. And that is your job. And that's why answering that particular question is educate yourself. Be sure that you know this subject in your own mind. Ask a lot of questions. Then you can come up with your answer. But personalize it. Make it feel that it's coming from you. It's not a script. Okay? It's coming from you. It's like me when I'm talking about, I don't have a script. I have no idea, okay, where I'm going, how I'm going to start, what I'm going to say. The topic is the same. And the same thing, you have to personalize it so it sounds authentic. Yes, another question. Okay, Sophia?
Yeah, you wanted to discuss the connection between Yom HaShoah and Yom HaZikaron.
Yes, very good. In Jewish life, we celebrate life. I do not know if you know that or not. Take a look. Next week, there will be Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day. It's not like here in the United States barbecue, because almost every Israeli had somebody or knew somebody that knew somebody, okay, that died, okay, in the fight to have a country. But right after Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron, the next day, it's all joy. This is the Independence Day. So we celebrate life, and I want you to understand that, which is very important. But there is a very strong connection between the Holocaust and Yom HaZikaron. During the Holocaust, people died because we did not have a country. On Yom HaZikaron, we remember the people that died for us to have a country. And you may not agree with the policies of the Israeli government. Okay, it's your right. But one thing, love it and fight, because it's the only country that we have. It's our only salvation. Like, take a look what's happening in France. Last year, 850,000 people left France to go to Israel. 8,500, I don't remember, but I think 8,500 people left France and to go to Israel because they had, okay, a place to go. During the Holocaust, there was no place to go. There were only 3 countries, like I told you, that officially accepted the Jewish refugees. China, my uncle was not a survivor, he was a refugee in Shanghai, Dominican Republic, and Philippines. No other country officially wanted to accept them. People say Jews, but officially, no country except those 3. So therefore, I'm trying to tell you there is no comparison, okay, to what happened in the Holocaust. Okay, people are calling Trump, okay, Hitler. Trump is not a dictator. He wants to do certain things. The Congress doesn't give him the money. He cannot do anything. He's blocked. Okay, he can blow air as much as he wants. Okay, he can say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. If he doesn't have the money, he cannot do it. He wanted to get additional money, okay, for the small businesses, an additional 350,000. The Democrats have the money. They said, no, you're going to do what I want. Okay, so they finally compromised, and I think they will do it. But that's the point. You cannot compare Trump to Hitler or anything else. It's totally inappropriate. Yes.
I'm going to ask a question personally.
Yes.
So I studied abroad in Poland when I was in college. I'm no longer in college anymore, but during that 3-month span, we visited Auschwitz a few times, and the tour guide had told us that they are taking down pieces pretty often now because of funding and because they don't find that it's as pertinent anymore. What do you have to say in regards to that? Do you find it? I found it as almost insulting to take down these blocks of history. But how would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I've been one time, like I told you, in the March of the Living with the young people from the Bay Area. But the camps today are sanitized. And I'm as a Holocaust survivor, I cannot understand what the people went through during those days. You cannot explain it. There are no words for it. Pictures will not do it. I'll give you an example from in my particular case. When I had decided to give up my rights to my son because it was a very bitter divorce and to go back to Israel, that was a very difficult time for me. Before I got divorced, I cried every single day every single night for 5 years. And I had no more tears. And about 3 years ago, for the first time, I realized why I became unemotional. Have you heard of witness theater? This is high school students meet with the survivors for 8 months, once a week. In Yom HaShoah, they perform it to 5,000 people, and I was about 3 years ago, was part of it. And there were 6 of us. You should have seen every week, everybody was crying. There was one particular person who could not say the first sentence. I was the only one unemotional. And at that particular time, about 3 years ago, I realized why I became so unemotional is because it was my way of dealing with the pain when I lost my son. In Auschwitz-Birkenau, the rabbi, everybody was crying, the students, the rabbi, everybody. And I was cool, calm, collected. And in Auschwitz-Birkenau, the rabbi asked me if I want to say a few words. And for a split of a second, I had tears in my eyes. It probably won't happen again, but for a split of a second, I had. They were not the tears of sadness, they were tears of joy, seeing the young people, you know, the next generation interested in Israel, wanting to learn about it, and carrying the torch for us when we are born. But the first two words that came out from my mouth in Auschwitz-Birkenau, not far away from the crematorium, you know what it was? No shit. I'm still human. I'm not a robot. So a lot of the things that the Holocaust survivors have done, and I don't want you ever to do it, a lot of the things we kept it inside and we got hurt. All of us. And I do not want you have something, deal with it, but get it out. Don't dwell on it. And remember, tomorrow is a new day. It's a fresh day. It's a new beginning. Now, let me tell you, before you ask other questions, let me tell you how I overcame those two challenges. First of all, becoming homeless. I started volunteering. When I became homeless, I had to stop all connections with everybody that I knew. I had no papers. I could not prove what I did in my life, who I was, nothing. I had no connections, so I started volunteering. And I'll give you two examples. Okay, at one time I volunteered for 18 different organizations because each one gave me something that was missing in my life. But I'll give you two groups. One of them is Big Apple Greeter, which still exists, is taking visitors from other states and other countries and showing them around the city. The only requirement that you had, you can show them whatever you want. The only requirement is to do 12 visits a year, okay? And a minimum of between 2 and 4 hours. I did it for the whole day, 8, 10 hours, because I loved it. I was proud of my city to show them around. And I made friends all over the world. Today, if I would have the money, I can travel almost anywhere in the world. There will be somebody that will host me and that will show me the city that they love. One example. I'll give an example of an organization that does not exist anymore, and that is HAI. My job was to pick up tickets and to distribute to underprivileged people like myself. And the only thing I had to do is to write a report, who came, who did not come, were they on time or not on time. But I had two perks. I could see the show, and I could be a nice guy. Remember I told you I grew up in Transylvania? So I cannot be a nice guy, I'm the Jewish Dracula. But I could be a nice guy, and I could invite somebody to come with me to see the show. And you know, okay, the Broadway shows, how expensive they are. I've seen more Broadway shows that you can count on. And I've seen basketball, football. I have seen the concerts, opera, ballet, anything that you can think of. Unfortunately, okay, they're no longer in existence, okay? But I'm trying to tell you, you're not going to volunteer for something that you don't like. And start volunteering. And most of you, I'm quite sure that you're doing it already. But by volunteering, you will get a lot more than what you put in. With my son, I have a need. It's not a want. I want to go to Australia. If it happens, wonderful. Doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world. But I have a need to teach and to share. My need to teach and to share, I cannot do it with my son. I cannot do it with my grandchildren. So I had to look for a substitute. And my substitute is people like you. When I go to schools, okay, and when I talk to them, they become, whether they know it or not, my substitute grandchildren, and my need to teach and to share is fulfilled in different ways. So always, when you find a trauma, find a healthy substitute to deal with it. Now, to explain something else, something that I don't like in this country, two things. Number one, people have forgotten how to disagree in a civil way. Take a look what's happening in this country. But something else, even our leaders blame one another and are refusing to take responsibility. It would be very easy for me to blame the people that put me under, the poverty line and homeless. However, I don't. I have no ill feelings towards them. And the reason is because I took responsibility. These were people I trusted. So I gave them cash. Prove it. I did not put in writing, anything. So you cannot prove it. So by taking responsibility that they took advantage of my stupidity, I don't have the need to blame them. I don't have the need to blame circumstances. And I have become a free man. It's something, you made a mistake, take responsibility for it, and you forgive other people. Why shouldn't you forgive yourself? You're kind to other people. Why shouldn't you be kind to yourself? Okay? You respect other people. Respect yourself. So you made a mistake. So what? 20 years later, it won't make a difference. Forgive yourself. And the way you treat somebody, that's the way you will be treated. So everything starts with you. You are the most important person in your own life. That's my feeling. Yes.
Jake has a question.
Yes.
Hi, Sami. So nice to be on with you.
It's my honor. It's my honor.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. There was a interesting.
And by the way, where are you from?
I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay.
So there was an interesting documentary on Netflix recently called "The Devil Next Door" about the John Demjanjuk trial. I was curious what your thoughts are, what your memories are of that trial, and what you think.
I personally, I do not hate anybody. I knew hate, but not from here. That's easy to overcome. I knew it from the heart, and I've been able to overcome it. As a matter of fact, I even met with descendants of high-ranking Nazi criminals. I went to Germany, and I found out we have more in common than differences. And I went there I was very hesitant in the beginning, but I went there because I wanted to make sure that my head and my heart are connected. So intellectually, it's easy for me to talk about reconciliation. But if I wouldn't meet them, how will I feel? And I wanted to make sure that my head and my heart are connected, intellectually and emotionally. But you have to understand that it's very difficult at this particular age now when you bring somebody to court, that a lot of the people don't have the exact memories that they had in those days. I wrote a manuscript about my life, about my son, the things that I went through and everything else. And the memories were very vivid. I was able to put in everything, every word, everything else. Right now, I can tell you that if I remember 20%, it's a lot. So memories are not always the same. So to bring somebody to justice and to have the Holocaust survivors talk about it, sometimes it's difficult to differentiate what is their memory, real memory, and what is not. Okay? So I do not want any criminal, to be killed. But I want them to bring to justice. And they should spend the rest of their days, their lives, in prison. But it's not always easy because of many documents were destroyed, were missing. The memories of some of the Holocaust survivors are sometimes conflicting, confusing. So, do I believe that he should have been in prison? Absolutely. I'm convinced of it. But in a court of law, they were not able to prove it. I don't know how else I can answer it. Look,
Well, I think it's interesting.
a
They did.
lot of the people were guilty of something else. They were guilty of being bystanders. People ask me if I forgave, and I said yes. And if looks can kill, I wouldn't be here talking to you. But they have to listen to what I say. I have forgiven the world that stood by and did nothing, not the criminals. There's a big difference. Sorry for interrupting you. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say they didn't convict him in Israel, and then they sent him back to the U.S. and then he was sent to Germany, I believe, and then they actually did convict him in Germany after that. So, and then he was appealing, and then he died during the appeal. So it was kind of a crazy case. So.
Okay, so in this particular case, justice was served, but basically it's very difficult, okay, to bring somebody to justice. There are cases, very few here and there, okay, like somebody, I don't know, he was in the 90s late, so he was convicted or whatever it is. But the cases are very few in our part, so it's very difficult. But we have to realize that the world was guilty. They stood by, because if they would have said something, if the people would have cooperated, would have stood up, okay? The best example I can give you is we have, for instance, drugs in the United States, right? And there are certain neighborhoods that are completely infested with them. However, there are areas where the people in the neighborhood stood up and they had to move to a different area. And that is what I'm trying to say is we as a community have to be together to stand up. And the Jewish people, unfortunately, are not united. I feel personally that a person's strength is also a person's Achilles heel. The Jewish people, okay, are very, how shall I say, enterprising. One of the reasons is because we have so many different opinions. Okay, but that is also our Achilles heels, because politically, when we have to fight for something, we are not united and to convince the world of our right to exist. And that's what I'm trying to say. And this is, you can take it with Israel, we can take it in a personal level. So always think of yourself, what is your biggest strength? And if you really take a very deep look, really, you will find it's also your weakness. My strength is, okay, that I am strong, right? I will not show any pain, even when I'm in pain. You will never see it in my face. I will not, okay, talk about my problems, my issues. But that's my weakness, because we need somebody. We need to get it out of the system. And now I have a venue that when I go and I speak to students, that is my venue. But without it, I would probably be stuck in the past. Now, we have celebrated Passover. I hope that all of you know about know Hebrew. And they say Yetzias Mitzrayim. So Mitzrayim, okay, is actually a land. Okay, it's a physical thing. But what a lot of people don't know, that in Hebrew, the word, the root for Mitzrayim is Meitzar, which is constraint. So we were constrained physically in Egypt, but we ourselves constrain ourselves and we put blocks in our own minds. So do me a favor, okay? Right now, Yom HaShoah, Passover, what do you call it? The Remembrance Day, okay? Independence Day. Take a look at yourself, okay? Find out your strengths and decide what you want to do and how you want to make this a better world. Now, obviously, I'm talking to a lot of leaders in the campuses and everything else. Okay, so you're already doing some of it, but find out what else can you do? How much better can you do it and everything else? So it's very important. Yes.
I guess I was given permission to ask one more follow-up question.
Sure.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could share what some of your favorite books are and what are your favorite books to gift. If you can, what are you, when you give gifts as books, what do you give and what are your favorite things that what books are that you love?
I have never met that person. But first of all, let me tell you my motto in life. I am not what happened to me. People identify themselves, but what they achieved. People identify themselves by their illness. I had a girlfriend, she identified herself. She used to introduce herself to someone and say, hi, my name is Anita, I'm bipolar. Who cares? But that was her identity. I don't identify myself the fact that I was homeless. In the fact that I cannot speak with my grandchildren, that's not my identity. And this is my motto in life. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to be. And within my means, I'm finding and doing the things that make me happy. Okay? So we all have choices. People, when they go through a trauma, you probably heard people say, why me? I have never asked myself that question. It was always, I dealt with it for a few days, maybe for a week. And after that, how do I move forward? To answer your question, is somebody that promotes my ideas as a motivational speaker, but she put it in a book form. She's a Holocaust survivor. I think she's a psychologist or psychiatrist, and she is from California. And her book is The Choice. And her name is Eva Eger. I read the book. It's basically confirming the things that I say, but she put it in psychological terms. So if you want to do it, she's basically saying that you can take away anything that you want from a person. But you cannot take away hope. You cannot take away what you put in your own mind. So whatever is in your mind that stops you from doing certain things, get rid of it. Get rid of the clutter. It's the same thing like with a computer. Too much garbage, and the computer slows down.
Have any other books that you've, any other favorite books in your life that you've really loved to read?
Well, right now I don't have any more the patience to read, but I used to be an avid reader. I used to like to read the biographies of great leaders. And it was not only the story, but the lessons that I was looking behind it. What made them? Okay, what were the traits that helped them achieve, okay, those great things? So it was not just reading their story. For me, it was a learning lesson, okay, and to see which of those traits I can incorporate in my own life. I had at one time, I had an extremely vast library before I became homeless and everything else, before I went back to Israel, okay, from Milwaukee in 1983. It was not just to put them on the shelf. I really read it. And that was part of it that gave me the strength and gave me also the wisdom that I'm having today. But one thing that I must tell you, what sustained me in life was always my mental attitude. I always had a positive mental attitude. And a lot of people, I was always an optimist, and everybody thinks when you talk about optimism, they talk about the glass half full, glass half empty. But I have a different concept. A pessimist sees in every opportunity a problem. So negative people will come to you and you say, well, I have this idea, and they will find something wrong. Okay? But that's the way they think. It's not what you think. An optimist sees in every problem an opportunity. And I'll give you a specific example. When I was in the shelter, I was a very heavy smoker, about 3.5 packs a day. I loved it, and I would have never quit smoking. But now I'm in a situation, I'm in a shelter, and I don't want to live. My will to live was gone. It's like a rubber band. You stretch it every time it comes back. At some point, it dries and it breaks. And I was at the breaking point. And I said, if I will quit smoking cold turkey, I will recover. I did not say I will try. I said, I will. December 13, 1996 is the last day that I had a cigarette. And that's what I'm saying. Here was a problem, and I saw it as an opportunity to get healthier and to regain my will to live. That's all I can say. You have to find something within yourselves what works for you. Nobody can tell you what to do. And don't listen to other people, because if somebody will tell you something, if you want to do something and they will tell you you cannot do it, guess what? They cannot do it. Does not mean that you cannot do it. Don't let anybody define who you are.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Very good question. You're very inquisitive, Jay. Where are you from? I think you mentioned to me, but I forgot.
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Okay. Sophia, I have, let me tell you.
You have to leave in a little bit, but Aiden has a question.
I have another 20 minutes.
Okay. Aiden, if you want to.
Yeah, 20 minutes.
I was wondering, in 2019, in Poland, there was a new policy about the Holocaust. I was wondering, what do you think about the new policy that that the Polish people thought that it was fair?
I'm sorry, I did not fully.
So, what do you think about the new, like, it's pretty new. In 2019, there was a new policy about the Holocaust in Poland that we cannot blame the Polish people for it. What do you think about the policy?
In Poland?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have talked to some Polish people, and they were caught between the Russians and they were caught between the Germans. However, by trying to deflect the guilt that they are guilty of, that is incorrect. Because a lot of them, some of them did save Jews, no question about it. And a lot of them are honored in Yad Vashem, the Garden of the Righteous Among the Nations. but a lot of them were guilty of collaborating. In many cases, they were worse than the Germans. So they were not the only one, as the whole world went crazy. But that is not for me to criticize. That is something that the Israeli government has to do it, and that is the Jewish leadership has to do it. Because coming from me, okay, won't make a difference. But the Jewish leaders, and this is what I'm saying, is we are not united. We are not, we don't have a united front.
Thanks.
And Sami, I'm gonna give you the last question on Instagram, and it is, what is your goal? And I think that this kind of is a great opportunity for you to speak on your foundation and your mission.
Okay. I want you to understand something. Learning starts with a question. Don't ever be afraid to ask questions, and even hard questions. I believe it was either a 5th or 6th grader that asked me to summarize 72 years of life in 2 sentences. You would think it's a stupid request, and it wasn't. And I gave an answer, which is not too bad, because it was, I like to be authentic, didn't have time to think about it. But I went home and I did not like it. I said, I must find a better answer. And as I was thinking, I said, let me find out what are the 3 most important moments in my life. Number 1, being a parent and knowing the joy of parenting. It's something I cannot teach you, but believe me, it is the greatest high that you will ever have. And I was fortunate to know that joy. Second one is I knew hate, but I knew hate from here. I know what hate can do to a person. And I've been able to overcome it. And the third one, which may really surprise you, is being homeless. If I would have not been homeless, I probably would have not volunteered. I probably would have not met all of the people, not achieved what I have achieved. And if I would have not been homeless, I would have not found what a lot of people are not finding today, and this is their mission in life. And I have found my mission in life to educate young people, as many as I can, nationally and internationally. And I like to be busy, like for instance, tomorrow, to give an example, right now after this, I'm giving another presentation to the Israeli consulate in Miami. Tomorrow I have 5 presentations. And I wish every single day that I could be busy. That is my goal. What I'm wishing from you, this is your generation, educate yourself. Fight for what you believe. But make sure, don't think globally. Think one person at a time. Mentor one person. And make sure that that person will mentor somebody else. Exponentially, we will make it a better world, and we will eventually defeat the virus of hate, bigotry, and anti-Semitism. And don't you ever be afraid to speak or to be proud of who you are. That is the most important thing. People are afraid to speak. Don't be afraid. Well, I'm preaching to the choir because you're the leaders, okay, and everything else. But this is what I want you to convey to the other people: to be proud of who they are, what they do, and to educate themselves. Everything can be done only through education. And I want to thank, okay, I just saw Ilan, okay, and I want to thank him, thank you for starting something absolutely amazing, probably the best organizations, student organizations, okay, supporting Israel. Kudos to you and to the people that I met.